I don't normally bring on Dave Eckert to talk about recruiting, but when breaking news happens, we talk about it on the BWI Daily Edition. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, T. Frank. I'm excited about the recruiting news.
Yeah, so let's get right to it because we're going to talk about this tomorrow in depth with Ryan Snyder, and we'll be talking about it next week with recruiting ranking director of On3, Charles Powell. We're going to get into a bunch of stuff with the class of 2023, but the news today, if you did not see this already, is that Penn State officially has a 5-star commit for the class of 2023. Offensive lineman from Wyomissing, Reading, Pennsylvania, Jven Williams has been bumped up from a high 4-star to a 5-star by Penn State, or by On3 for Penn State. So this is big news when it comes to the recruiting rankings, Dave.
It is. And it's big news if you're invested in Penn State's offensive line and its improvement, because Penn State kind of has two, elite level offensive linemen with Williams and Alex Burkmeyer, who is kind of on that 4 or 5-star bubble as well. So exciting stuff.
Yeah, two interior players that are both borderline 5 stars, with Jven Williams being the one announced today as a 5-star. And I said this earlier on Twitter, and I will say it here again. I'm going to do my best not to throw my shoulder out patting myself on the back about Jven Williams, because watching his film, if you want to check it out, I'll throw the link in the description of this video of T. Frank's film room about Jven Williams. He's phenomenal. Like, I'm not surprised that he's seen as a 5-star by On3 and potentially in the future by other recruiting services as well, even as an interior player, because I don't think he's just an interior player, Dave. I think he's got the potential to be able to play tackle at Penn State. He may be an NFL player, and that's what that 5-star really means, is like if you were to draft 32 players to go into the NFL, he'd be one of the first-round picks. So he is a definite NFL potential player. But as an interior player, that might be where he goes in the NFL. College, I have no problem him playing tackle. That's a big thing for Penn State at this point, right, Dave? They don't have a lot of tackle prospects.
Definitely. We've talked about this a lot. So getting some elite level talent there is important. How does he kind of fit into, because they've got 4 commits now,
Yeah,
Frank, and obviously he's not a new commit, but I know you wrote about this a little bit this morning. How does he fit into the puzzle with those guys? Can they make a cohesive unit out of that group?
Yes, actually, I think they fit together pretty well. And this is, I wrote about this earlier this week when I was building an offensive line out of the players in the class of 2023. And despite the fact that Anthony Donko, 35-inch arms, tackle prospect for Penn State, I put him on the right side because the best athlete and the best player and the guy that has all of the things and the earmarkers of being the best lineman, with respect to Alex Burkmeyer, by the way, who is another guy that I think is phenomenal. The left tackle I picked for Jven Williams, despite being ranked as an interior player, because he's just that good. So you've got him with tackle potential, who could be great on the interior if Penn State were to get another true tackle prospect. Donko on the other side. Alex Burkmeyer, I get the sense he could be a great center, and Penn State's seeing a lot of, with their zone blocking scheme, they're seeing a lot of nose tackles, tight fronts, and what you need to do to beat those condensed fronts is to have somebody that can just throw people, right, at that center position, that can handle a nose tackle. Burkmeyer can play any of the interior 3 positions at a high level, so he can play center or guard. And if you're building an offensive line, you're going to go with the 3 positions to start of tackle, center. So I put him at center. Then you have Joshua Miller, who we're going to hear from. We're having an interview with him early next week. He's the right guard, and he's 328 pounds. He's a physical, strong blocker with just phenomenal pad level. So they've got athletes, length, strength, positional skills. This is a really good offensive line class for offensive line coach Phil Trautwein. It feels like the real deal.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting, and it's also a little bit strange because with offensive linemen, we know that it's going to be a while.
Right.
They have some bridges to cross before they get these kids on campus, and ready for college football too. So
And you were writing something about this, and I don't. If you just give us a quick thumbnail, because I think this is something coming out today, as of recording. It's Thursday for the BWI Daily Edition that you're writing about. The offensive line and recruiting at this position. It's a hard one to predict, even when you have a really strong feel, right?
It is, yeah. I'm going through all of the top-rated offensive line commits that Penn State has landed. And a lot of them haven't lived up to it. Most of them haven't lived up to it, really. And look, offensive line is weird, right? Because it feels like it's one of those positions where you're never happy with what you're getting if you're a fan. But clearly, you've got to land the talent, but you've also got to develop the talent as well. And I think that Penn State maybe hasn't done that historically as well as fans would have liked to see, and that's kind of borne out in what I'm looking at. But certainly got to be excited about the news today. Nothing but a positive for Penn State fans for sure.
Yeah. And we'll be covering this as it develops and as the rest of the 2023 stuff comes out, because all of this stuff is a constant process in recruiting. So we'll keep you up to date on all of that stuff. But you, Dave, are not here just filling in for Ryan Snyder talking about Jven Williams. You're also filling in for Nate Bauer, who's normally our guest on the mailbag segment. But Nate was caught in some travel issues, so you're here on the recruiting show. Flip gears here on the mailbag side of things. Are you ready to get going on that?
I am the human Swiss Army knife, and my Swiss Army knife has a mailman attachment. That was a horrible joke. I'm sorry, but
that's all right. We'll move on. We'll play the fancy graphic, and we'll get to some of the questions here. So this is our BWI mailbag session with myself, and today Dave Eckert filling in. If you ever want to get a question on the show, make sure you either are a member at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, sign up for just $1, and you can get 12 months of access. You can ask us these questions directly. I was having a conversation today. I've had two awesome conversations on the message board. The first one, we were talking about lifting, and we were talking about testing numbers and different strength index things amongst Penn State offensive linemen in the class of 2023. Still talking about that stuff with Anthony Donko, some stuff that came up there. Super stimulating conversation about strength and lifting and all of those things. And then I was talking about ACL injuries today and kind of the diving into the rate of which athletes come back from ACL injuries. All of it related to Penn State sports, but also totally unrelated, just awesome information. So if you want to get in on any of those conversations or ask the show, that's the best way to go. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, sign up for just $1, 12 months of access. So another homework piece here is go into the description of the video again. The first link is going to be sign up for just $1. Okay, so one of our message board members, John H., asks, how many outgoing transfers do you suspect Penn State will see from the start of spring practice to maybe midsummer? For example, the running back room. For those listening on the podcast, I'm summarizing his paragraph here. At least one might leave, and then since the issue of 85-member scholarship limit has been raised, assuming PSU will be over the limit, bringing in a couple of transfers, there still needs to be a few outs. Couple slots open up for the guys that are coming in. So, Dave, you did a great breakdown, and you've been updating your roster scholarship chart this offseason. Where is Penn State right now, and what would you expect the numbers need to be for Penn State to get to equilibrium by the midsummer heading into fall?
Yeah, so based on the information that's available to us, and my count, I have them at 85 right now. After the Hunter Norzad addition. So that would mean that theoretically, they don't have to lose anybody. But clearly they're still active in the transfer portal. They've just offered a defensive end from Georgia Tech, whose name is escaping me.
Jordan Dominic.
Yep. So, they're still pursuing guys. And I think it's reasonable to expect that, there will be an out or two. That's just kind of how it works. But I don't think they're forced to, have any subtractions there.
Yeah, this is one where I don't know that it's going to be a ton, because clearly Penn State, as you mentioned, is still looking at guys in the portal. And how we're seeing this evolve, Dave, is another interesting part of the conversation, because last season, I don't particularly remember specifically, but the guys just announced that they were coming to Penn State. Like, there was some rumor, and then it happened pretty quickly. This turning into actual recruiting where you send out multiple offers. Maybe you're moving on from a guy. Maybe you're not. I don't know how many defensive ends Penn State's trying to get. Like, are they trying to get 2?
Yeah.
Is it more than that? I mean, if they're offering the twins from North Texas, Grayson and Gabriel Allen, I want to say. Anyway, right. Those two, they are a package deal, it seems. So they need to at least offer 2 defensive ends. So I don't know. This is a hard one to really predict. I think we know they're still after another offensive lineman in the portal, so there's 3. So you need to at least have 3 transfer out. I don't know that it's going to be a ton, like you said. So we'll move on to another question that I think we have a better idea of. Old Frog 26 asks, who will be the punt and kickoff returners this year? What can be done to improve the potential for explosive plays from the special teams? What do you think about the first part of that question? Who comes to mind for punt and kickoff return?
Well, yeah, Devin Ford was their primary kickoff returner last year. Yeah. So obviously, he'll be back. But, another guy that we could see there is Caden Saunders, who we know has a good background of doing that at the high school level. We like his tools to be able to do that. But as far as the second part of that, I question whether Penn State really wants that.
Right.
I think, and maybe it's different with Stacey Collins, but listening to Joe Lorig and what he had to say about the return game, they were very, very content to play it conservative and give their offense the ball at the 25-yard line. That's just, it wasn't an issue for them. I think fans made it into more of an issue than Penn State actually views it. They don't want mistakes. That is their special teams philosophy. They do not want mistakes. So, if they feel like they have someone special back there, will they maybe take some more risks? It's possible, but I don't necessarily know that it's item number 1 on the checklist.
The difference is that I don't think it's one guy for punt and kick return. Typically, those are different skill sets. You've got kick returners that have to have speed and the ability to break tackles, but punt returners are more agility, short area quickness, and then the burst. So that's the difference. Is Penn State has traditionally had a running back, you mentioned Devin Ford, be the kickoff returner because it makes sense. Physical, tackle breaking, wide open speed. Don't forget, Miles Sanders and Saquon Barkley both started as kick returners. So if you're going to have a freshman tailback play, I don't know that it's Katron Allen's skill, but it is Nick Singleton's skill. I could absolutely see if he's going to play in 2022, that's a guy that's going to have an opportunity. If you want to get him more touches, and it may not all be at running back, kickoff would be a great place. And then punt returners, I'm less certain of, because you look at the receivers and you look at, I think Caden Saunders is a great opportunity if he's another guy that they don't want to redshirt. If he's going to play this fall, that's another, just like Singleton, that's a way to get the ball in his hands and see if something happens. The only way that it is a priority is if you've got somebody that makes it a priority. Again, like a Barkley. And in their freshman seasons, are those guys, they'd have to prove that they're that you're going to we're going to now focus on kick returns and not just worry about conservatively starting at the 25. Because if you got somebody that guarantees you that anyway, then why not? Because good kick returners should be able to get you to the 25. Punt return, the name that comes to mind just because he's listed as athlete is Marquise Wilson. So does he get an opportunity to do that as a veteran player? He's a junior. He's a receiver and a DB, so he fits both of those criteria as a guy that is going to be able to, has those short area quickness skills. Those two, I'd say, would be the ones I would point to. But punt return, I expect less out of than kick return. Punt return is absolutely just make the right decision, right, Dave? Like you just said, either catch the ball and get us at the 15 if it's going to be the 2, or let the ball go over your head and we'll get it at the 25 instead of at the 17. That is more, you're right, in punt return especially. Don't fumble, don't muff the punt, and then make the right decision about whether to catch it or not. Pocono 570, how much damage did COVID really do to the 2020 recruiting class in terms of development, talent, depth on the current roster? This one, is there actually like a tangible way to answer this, Dave?
Probably not, but I think when you ask members of the coaching staff about it, they are, fairly enthusiastic about saying that it did matter.
Right.
We've heard James Franklin talk about this a lot, and is it probably in James Franklin's best interest to say that based on how the last couple of seasons have gone? Yes, but I think that there's something to that, right? I mean, not only did you not practice as frequently, not only did you lose entire phases of your off season, when you were able to practice, it was, there were all these restrictions. So,
right.
Yeah, I think it matters. It'll be interesting to see if these guys get to their ceilings 2 years from now. But certainly the short-term effect for me has mattered, whether or not it's, whether or not it factors into the long-term development. I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
Yeah.
But short-term, absolutely.
So I'm just going to throw out a couple of guys here that I think it goes either way, truthfully. So Curtis Jacobs got to play early, and it was a benefit for him, right? So he played in 2020 as a true freshman. And we see him now as the will linebacker, presumably going into spring football as a leader on the defense. That worked out for him. Keandre Lambert-Smith has struggled because he played early, and the drops and some of the consistency issues, I think, have played into maybe some of the confidence of the position or the team's confidence in him at times where, I point to it again, and not to beat on this and beat the kid up, but he was benched a couple of times late in big games because he dropped the football. And if he wasn't called upon as a true freshman and got out there in those situations, like, what's the development path like that there? You can make a case either way. Keziah Holmes redshirted last season. So instead of having a redshirt season in 2020, he had to do that last year. So that is an absolute, you can see that's one thing that happened there. Kevon Lee, same thing. I think Kevon Lee playing early wasn't necessarily the best thing for him because I think it set an unrealistic expectation for him that he was the lead back, that he was going to be the guy. And we saw some of the consistency issues and the growing pains that happened because he didn't have that time to work into the lineup, as opposed to being thrown in there. And the Noah Cain injury obviously was a huge part of that. But in 2020, the whole thing was kind of rolled into that. Other guys in the group, Keziah Izzard is somebody who needs to develop and was thrust into the spotlight this past season, again, because of injury. But if he was developed the way he should have been in 2020, does that change his trajectory going forward? I don't know that he was fully ready for the spotlight. And maybe he wouldn't have been anyway, but I know that lag in development made it so that it was even more of a struggle than it would have been. And then the guys that we haven't seen along the offensive line, I don't know that there's any way for us to really know. Jimmy Christ, Chumba, Vanover. Like you said, it takes a long time for these guys to develop. So what is it, whether or not they're going to be ready or not anyway? So hard to tell, but I think we have a couple of different ways you can look at that. Okay, next one, Dave. From your experience, I say Dave, but this is directed almost directly at me. Psychim asks, from your experience...
Please take this one.
From your experience, can kids improve 40 speed at the age of 16 to 18? Even a percentage improvement can make a difference. Nice interview with our quarterback recruit yesterday that he's referring to my conversation with Lamont Payne we did here on the BWI Daily Edition. So check that out if you haven't seen it. He's a really smart, really, I think, mature, grounded kid. I was super impressed with him as a person and as a football mind. Only question, maybe he did not have a top-end 40 speed. So Lamont said on the show, on the Daily Edition, that he ran a 4.53 with an injured hip at a camp at Pitt. So do you think he has adequate mobility and hip movement to stay a cornerback? Is something they desperately need? Thanks for kind words and about enjoying the program. So first off, yes, you can absolutely get faster from 16 to 18. You can get faster from 18 to 21. Like we've seen, Jahan Dotson's a perfect example of a guy that improved his 40 time. Now, there is some stuff that I'm not an expert on of slow twitch muscles and fast twitch muscles, and you're born with those. So can you develop them? Yes, but you can't make new of those, and I don't know the science behind that. My expert in the house is not here for me to ask on the show. But when it comes to speed, the other thing is 4.53, Dave, is a good speed for a corner in high school. That's good. You have NFL corners that have a 4.53 40-yard dash. And the way he plays, the way Lamont plays with physicality, and yes, he does have great hip mobility. He stays with receivers really well when he's not anticipating and getting too jumpy at the line of scrimmage. Something he talked about of his maturity and patience. When he's not doing all of those, he looks the part. He's great. So even if he didn't get faster, I think 4.53, if that's the time, that's a good number. Like that's a number you can play with and you can win with because he has so many other tools and talents. Anything you want to mention on this?
Yeah, I mean, Penn State loves that like bigger, longer, more physical brand of corner too, don't they?
Yeah.
So like, are they going to run from those traits? I don't know. It seems like they've been pretty willing to stick with those guys. So obviously this is more your domain, but I just think if you look at, some of the corners in Penn State's recent history, it does seem like he's pretty similar.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're never going to turn down length and size. He's 6 foot tall. He's got a good reach. So all of those tools are there. And that is, that about 6 feet tall. You want to have 30 as long as possible. Like Joey Porter Jr. is great, but
right.
31 plus inch arms. 33 is always the number, I think, universally in football, where you get to 32 or 33 inch arms and you're set. But he plays well in so many different areas that it's all the projection, but he projects favorably. And one of the things he said to me after the interview, which I knew this was coming. He's like, just by the way, I'm a 4-star in the other recruiting services. And I just wanted, we have him as a 3-star in On3, and I agree with him. Like, I really like his game. I think he's a little underrated, so I just wanted to say that out loud. So yeah, Lamont Payne is a great prospect for Penn State, and I don't think he needs to get too much faster to be a part of the conversation at corner. Mature player, so we'll see what his senior season brings, is whether that can inform he can be a contributor early. So our friend from Twitter, we're getting to our Twitter questions, at Thomas Frank Carr, if you ever want to ask a question to the show. Beaverman72, holding it down. I know we need to take winter workout shout-outs with a grain of salt, but is it impressive that Zane Durant has been recognized multiple times, or concerning that Izzard, Elise, and Beeman have not been recognized? Maybe I missed some shout-outs along the way. There was a new round of them again, and I think it was this week on Tuesday, Zane Durant got another one. So that's 2 or 3 at this point. But the rest were announced today before our recording. So first part, what do you think about that? And then who were the ones that stood out to you today on Thursday with the shout-outs?
Yeah. If you listen to our live show on Monday, I think you know where I stand with the winter workout tweets. Like, are they information that is relevant and helpful? Yes. Am I willing to derive long-term conclusions from them most of the time? No. Because I get it. It's what we have to go off of, but I'm hesitant to make projections based off of tweets. But I think Smith Vilbert got one on Thursday.
Yes.
So that's interesting. He's somebody that we've kind of got circled. The other one that was notable was Bo Pribula, who got the quarterback one. And then Nick Singleton got one. Is that his first?
Yes.
I think that's his first one.
Yep.
And then I think for the second time, Olu Fashanu got the offensive line one. So, those are all guys that we're interested in. And I think in Fashanu's case specifically, that's a guy that Penn State needs to see growth from.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging that he's that he's getting that nod. But yeah, I don't know. As far as, am I going to start ringing alarm bells because certain guys aren't winning these? No. But it is nice to know, who the coaching staff is kind of circled and underlined for us to take note of.
What I want to know, two things, is what position is Zane Durant playing? I think he's a 3 technique. He's probably he's gonna be a 3 technique, but at 260 pounds and he's making these moves this early. If they want to get him on the field, is he like a third down specialist as a pass rusher? Is he a strong side defensive end to start and then work him in? If he's pushing for playing time, then we have to have that conversation. So that's the interesting part to me about Zane Durant. And then secondly, I need to know who his high school strength coach is, or if he had like a private strength coach in Florida, because he's stacked to begin with, and he's been stacked since high school. But he's putting on a show apparently this offseason. That's really impressive. Yeah. So he's a huge get in that class.
He was at the I went to watch or to take some photos of Penn State's football players hanging out with the Thon kids, and he looked big when he was there hanging out with the kids, and he was impressive physically for sure. So yeah, he's a guy to watch, definitely.
So we'll get to our last question here, Dave. This is from Joe Ferguson on Twitter, Joseph Ferguson 7. Do you see the offense scaling back on multiple tight end sets based on the lack of production from last year? Washington, Mega, KLS seem to be more promising targets. We have a bonus one I need to get to as well that I'll throw in here that has a similar theme. So you start with that while I go get our last question.
Yeah. So based on what the coaching staff has said about the tight ends after the season, I think that they actually want to get them more involved. They still feel that all 3 of those tight ends, and maybe even 4 or 5, depending on what Jerry Cross and Khalil Dinkins do and how they grow, are very good. So, are we going to see fewer 3 tight end sets? Maybe, but if that does happen, I don't think it's because Penn State thinks less of its tight ends. I think if that happens, it's just a natural evolution of the offense, or Mike Yurcich tweaking some things schematically. I don't think it's our tight ends aren't as good as we thought they were. Let's take one of them or 2 of them off the field now.
So here's the second question I wanted to add and do a little bit of this editing on the fly. So PSU 87 asks, is there any sense they're going to throw to the tight ends more this year? Mentioning the winter workout tweets again, Theo's won tight end of the day like 3 times. So he's been impressive as a winter workout warrior. So I think it just depends. This is actually a good thing, right? So this is where you want to be as long as you have a quarterback and a system and everything in place where you've got so many different options that people like. You could point to, hey, 3 tight end sets of the future for this team because Theo Johnson is taking a step forward. Tyler Warren looked great at the end of last season, and that's going to push Brenton Strange as the starter, who is a great run blocker. So you've got 3 options there. I would say I would come down more with PSU 87 here than I would with Joe in that I don't know that we know anything about Malik Mega, and Keandre Lambert-Smith offers huge upside, but he's got to play more consistently, what we talked about earlier. So Mitchell Tinsley is the name here. Washington, Mitchell Tinsley, those are going to be the top 2 targets. From there, it's going to be a dogfight as to who gets the next part of the offensive reps. Because tight end, third receiver, running back, who is it going to be? Because there are only so many there's only so many plays to go around. And I think that's putting you in a good position. If I were to make you, Dave, between the 2, tight end position, third receiver, where are you putting your chips? If you're doing an early futures bet, which one would you say?
Probably the tight ends. I want to add that I'm actually changing my stance. The assistant coach winter workout tweets are actually basically my Bible now, because I picked Theo Johnson as my breakout player before the season, and he's won it 3 times, so now I look smart.
There you go. Smart man.
I think, yeah, I mean, James Franklin before the season last year said, we think we have one of the best tight end rooms in the country. And when he was kind of asked after the season, like, hey, do you still think that? He was like, he didn't change his take. So yeah. I think Penn State really likes its tight ends. I like Penn State's tight ends. I think they have some growing to do, but I don't think that the wide receivers are so deep and so explosive that they're going to be taking, they're going to say, oh, only one tight end on the field at a time because we got to get these wide receivers out there. I don't think that's feasible.
Yeah, and if you look at, I looked at the tight end room as a whole earlier this offseason when it came to targets, and they were third on the team. So the tight end position definitely has a higher ranking maybe than the third receiver on the team. And, part of that is who's stepping up. One game it might be matchup driven, and Keandre Lambert-Smith had some big games and was getting some more targets. And then you saw a shift between who was the primary receiving tight end. But as you said, James Franklin believes they're at their best when they can have multiple tight ends on the field. And let me explain why. And it's not a hard concept, but if you've got Theo Johnson, who is 6'6", 250 out there, 256, whatever he is, and you've got Bretton Strange, who's 253 pounds, and he's 6'6", and you have any number of these guys who are 6'5 plus, 250 plus, they're run blockers. They are better run blockers, and they don't have to be involved as receivers necessarily to give you an advantage. So that's the beauty of the Gronk tight end. That whole revolution we almost had in the mid-2000s, the 2010s at the tight end position with the George Kittles and all these guys that you look for these unicorns because they block like linemen, they catch like receivers, and it gives you a distinct advantage on the football field of whoever you line up against them, that player is the incorrect body type to play against them. And that's what the tight end, and if you got two of those guys, and you can start out in an I formation with one in the backfield, one lined up in line, and then split to a 4-receiver set, you've officially ruined the day of the defense if you've got two guys out there that can legitimately run routes. So that's why tight ends are valuable when you can find them. Penn State has to do a better job of implementing those things and targeting them on those plays. I don't think that the targeting was consistent even when there were routes that were open or routes that could be open. So that's another part of that as well. So great conversation. Enjoyed that.
Yeah. Whenever you need me to fill in, I'm available. But yeah, I had fun.
Any basketball thoughts? Get you out of here on some basketball thoughts. When is Penn State basketball playing next? The loss to Maryland was rough. I know we talked about that on the Monday live show. So what's the out there? So what's the damage done, and what's the next path forward?
So yeah, the Maryland loss more or less means that Penn State needs a very surprising result, either at Rutgers or at Illinois in the last week of the season to have a chance at the NIT. And they also need to beat Northwestern and Nebraska at home, which you would expect them to do. But, this is Penn State basketball, and, you rarely get the expected.
Right.
But they've got senior night Friday. I'm working on a big piece about John Hara, which I'm excited about. That'll probably come out early next week sometime if you want to keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, they've got Northwestern Friday. They beat Northwestern on the road earlier this season. They're ahead of Northwestern in the Big Ten standings. So if you're trying to avoid the first day of the Big Ten tournament, this is pretty much a game that you have to have. But as far as the NIT push, I think they're going to need something really surprising to get that done.
Well, we'll keep up to date with all of that stuff at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Dave does a great job following basketball and basketball recruiting. At David Eckert 98, I gave him an extra capital in his E. My bad there. And the D, right? You went all lowercase. You went understated for your Twitter handle.
I did.
Yeah. So I was,
but you've corrected my grammar, T. Frank, so I appreciate it.
yeah, well, correctness is more important than correcting your grammar with Twitter handles. And you could have 36 numbers in your name, and if I condensed it down to 1.75, it would be wrong. So make sure you follow him on Twitter is what I'm trying to say. And, of course, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Once again, sign up for just $1, get access to all this information so you don't have to wait to have the know. And, of course, if you're listening right now and you hear that, that's our outro music, which used to be our intro music, but was always our outro music. When you're hearing that, if you watch to this point, we are 35 minutes in of great conversation. You like the video, so give the video a like. Subscribe to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube, and have yourself a fantastic day. We'll be back tomorrow.